Hi, this is Suzanne Dome, live from my craft room. I'm the author of Empty Space and now Second Signal. And here's the proof copy. So that's proof that Second Signal will happen. My goal is this June. I'm actually a month and a half ahead of schedule. I wasn't supposed to have my proof copy until June, so I wasn't expecting to have the book out until August. But I'm looking at being a month ahead of schedule, so hopefully I'll have copies for AFW. Speaking of events, I am in my craft room because somebody thought that one of my other videos was shot in my craft room, and actually the green and yellow areas that I usually film in are the dining room and the living room. And since they brought up the craft room, I thought I would film in here today. So it's kind of a mess. I'm going to turn the computer so you can see. So you can see some of my tools sitting around, and I've got soldering equipment and a drill and a hammer and some stuff to put grommets and corsets, and of course I have my sewing machines in the one corner and piles of fabric waiting to be worked with. And you've probably saw some of my jewelry displays too that I was using over at the Raymond Fair from that video. Off-World Tribe is actually going to be open at the Buhler Citywide Garage Sale this weekend, so I'm very excited about that. And those are my hobbies. Today is actually my first day of relative freedom for the next 4 months. The school that I'm at got out early this year to do some construction on some of their buildings, so I get a 4-month summer to write. I'm very excited about this. I've got all kinds of time to write and all kinds of time to sew, and all kinds of time to edit this, and hopefully I'll be able to have book 3 set up by that point too, so I'm very excited about this. Earlier when I was filming, I actually had to ditch it because the dog kind of messed me up, so I'm going to turn the computer and you can see that special Weimaraner I mentioned. There she is, laying on her little bed. So that's something else I get to do for 4 months, is hang out with the Weimaraner that thinks leaves are evil, and that every time I film one of these that it's some person that's not supposed to be there stalking around the house. Earlier she just went nuts because I had the door closed, and she thought I was she thought I was an intruder. So yeah, so I get 4 months of freedom. I'm excited about this. So I guess I'll bring up the day job because I've never really talked about that much. And not everybody knows what a paraprofessional is. As a paraprofessional, I am an advocate for learning needs in the classroom. I don't work with severe needs students. I work in interrelated, so I go from regular classroom to regular classroom to support particular students that have an IEP that says that they need an extra person there to help them. And sometimes it's medical, sometimes it's mental or emotional. It depends on the student and what they've been through and what kind of needs that they have documented. This is a legal thing. I mean, schools have to provide this, and I'm actually proud that I'm part of this. I'm a big advocate for student needs. As a diabetic, there were some things that I struggled with when I was in school, and I kind of wish that I had a para, but they didn't have that back then. That was, 15 years ago, and they didn't do that back then, especially in high school. So, some of the supports that the students get now, I really wish that those had existed back then. I think there would be fewer people would have fallen through the cracks at that point, just because they couldn't do math or didn't understand English or, whatever it was they were struggling with. Not only that, but when you have a student advocate in a classroom, they also help the other students that are in there. I would hope. To me, a good para would not hover over one student, but help all of them. And it's been one of those things that since I started doing this in 2005, I have actually found myself becoming a big advocate for. So since I didn't do a post for Autism Awareness Month, this is my student advocacy post for today. And now you know a little bit about my day job, and that I take notes for students and support them in the classroom and give them emotional support and kind of cheerlead for them just a little bit. And I talk to teachers for them when the teachers don't want to listen. And and I make sure that their work is taken seriously and that their IEPs are followed. So we paras, we have an important job, and they always tell us that in the big para meetings at the beginning of the year at the orientation, but I think it's nice to hear it from other sources too, and sometimes I have parents and students who thanked me. Actually, during finals, I had a young lady who I advocated for, even though she's not on my list, but I took her to let her finish a test anyway, and she brought me Twizzlers, so I was ecstatic, and she was ecstatic because she got the chance to finish her test because somebody advocated for her. Otherwise, the teacher wasn't going to let her finish it. So, woohoo! So I am Suzanne Dome. I am an advocate for learning needs in the classroom and the use of para support. So if you don't have paras in your schools supporting your students with learning needs, I suggest you get to the school board and talk to them and say, hey, where's our paras? Because I've observed that we are a huge tool that can be used to ensure a student's success. Let's see, in other news, like I said, I'm getting Second Signal ready to go out. Been working on all of the stuff I'm going to do this summer, and I'm excited to be at Anime Festival of Wichita this summer, and I hope to have both books this year. Last year I didn't have either book. I didn't even have the first one. I just had coupons for it because I didn't have copies yet. So I'm hoping that this year I can actually have copies of Empty Space and copies of Second Signal. Interesting thing about the cover, I was actually at the Very Large Array with my boyfriend and took this photo myself. So this photo was actually taken back in June of last summer, and it was super hot, and I fried, and I was sunburnt, and by that point I had already been to White Sands and Alamogordo and Deming, and I was exhausted. And my boyfriend took me at the last minute to the Very Large Array, and we went into the gift shop 5 minutes before they closed, and the ladies were so patient and waited for us to pick some things out before they closed. And then we toured their fabulous little museum that they have there and watched the videos of them maintaining the dishes and describing how the dishes work and the receivers. And they have plaques up about the movie Contact. And it is true that at one point they did have a signal that was very, very strong and came from a region of space where there shouldn't have been anything. I think they discovered that it might have been a solar observational satellite at the time. But so Second Signal has kind of some double meanings in terms of my storyline. It's not just about SETI, and it's not about SETI. The book itself has very little to do with it except for a tiny blurb in the very beginning of the prologue. But I had to mention it because, if there was something out there, and they did start communicating with us, SETI's probably the first people who are going to know. And I just think it's kind of it's kind of a tribute to them a little bit, and the work that they've tried to do to understand the construction of our cosmos and some of the physics of our cosmos. And so shout out to SETI. You guys are great, and I hope that you guys get to stay funded and keep doing your work because I think it's more important than people realize. And that's also symbolic, the dish on the front. You think about signals and receiving signals. It has a lot to do with communication. In my first book, the symbol I used was the constellation of Orion, and I was going for the for the sake of everybody's comprehension, the conspiracy theories a little bit about the aliens coming from Orion and the myths about the aliens coming from Orion and the mythological obsession with it, combined with that it seems like everybody who gets abducted from rural areas or sees these things in rural areas, with the exception of all the stuff that goes on in Mexico City and everything that happened over Tucson. So, or not Tucson, but Phoenix, the Phoenix Lights. So I'm trying really hard to work in with my covers and my content. I try to work in some actual history and some UFO theory and that's one of those things that when I mentioned in my hobbies last time, that I do spend a lot of time watching documentaries about this so that I can include that and try to touch on those stories and those um, real life connections that people have. Um, okay, so I guess that was my shout out for today, my first day of freedom for 4 months. Hopefully I can do at least one of these a week and chat with you guys. If you have any questions, just ask me. I can be found on paganspace.net, the Steampunk Empire, Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and I have my personal page at www.emptyspace.us. So if you want to come by there and leave a comment, ask me a question, be happy to answer it. This is Suzanne Dome, author of Empty Space and Second Signal, and advocate for student needs in the classroom, signing off.